My name is Edson and I'm a change maker. What we do is we help organizations become better with their people agenda. We help them link their strategy better to what their people needs, but we also help leaders change their narrative so that we can get to sustainable decisions, actions, and results. If you really want to know how we do this, be on the lookout for the 3 episodes documentary that we have created for you. A lot of times people believe that in order to move forward, you only have to look at the future, look at the horizon. But I believe that in order for you to understand where you're going, you really need to know where you're coming from. In this episode, I will give you insights into who I am and why it is that I do what I do. And for that, we're gonna take you back to my roots, to the island of Curaçao. I'm the oldest of 4. My father was a Jehovah's Witness pastor. My mother was a non-traditional professional. And the reason why I say that is because she's a woman that was a trailblazer, that worked her whole life to help my father to support the family. Curaçao is a former trade slaving post. It has deep harbors required to be able to let the big slave transporting ships to dock so that we could spread the slaves into smaller boats that could go up the river of Latin America, also up the rivers in the United States for slaves to be sold. And that has marked the culture, my upbringing, the infrastructure, and the community that I've been brought up in. A slave trading post had a very specific characteristic. And for that we need to go back a little bit. When slaves were captured in Africa, you would never put groups that spoke the same language together on one ship. Because the captor, the colonizer, was afraid that these 150 to 300 people that were in the bowls of the ship would gang up on them. Because at the end of the day, there were only 25 white men on a ship like that. So what would happen is you would be separated when you would be captured on the shores of Africa. So in these boats, you would have hundreds of black people who didn't understand each other's language, captured in a boat, transported to a part of the world that they've never seen, that they didn't even understand existed. So when you arrive in Curaçao, there was no common language, there was no common culture. They couldn't understand each other. Therefore, the Dutch infrastructure and the Dutch language became the norm. And that's what was used, first of all, to help the groups understand each other, but also to break down any possible cultural transference that it would bring with them out of Africa. During the mixture and the connections, our language Papiamento was created, which has a lot of influence of African, but also European languages. I like to tell this story because it is important to tell it so that people understand that when we are talking about a history that was robbed from a generation, this is what the theft was. A lot of us don't know where our ancestry come in Africa. Therefore, as a society, we never had local heroes. We never learned our local history. We never learned who we really are and where we come from and where we can be proud of. So if I look at society now and I look at the struggles that people have to catch up, there is where I feel that the critical thinking, pushing the boundaries, understanding that not everything that comes from the West is the best, is still happening on the island where I come from. This translates also into my upbringing. Be the good boy, don't rock the boat too much. Western thinking is the best thinking that you can adopt. So comply, learn, try to fit in. And it is this that has carried me for a long time until my, what I so-called Black awakening happened.
Zo, ik denk nog steeds toen je hier naartoe moest komen om te studeren. Ja. Wat er allemaal is gebeurd met mami en papi. Papi wilde niet dat je hier naartoe komen.
Mijn vader wilde niet dat ik weg zou gaan. En ik begreep het toen niet. Hè? Ik begreep echt niet dat hij mij zo tegen wilde houden.
Ja.
Om mijn dromen te realiseren. Maar ja, met de jaren ga je ook wel begrijpen dat hij bang was dat hij me niet kon helpen.
Ja,
als
dat
ik niet
denk
succesvol
ik
zou zijn geweest. Dat ik te ver zou zijn. Het is mijn moeder die heeft doorgezet.
Zo, ja.
Mijn moeder heeft doorgezet. En dat was best wel een ding. Ze hebben best wel ruzie gehad.
Ja, ik kan me voorstellen. Voor jou,
ja, het was bijna een breekpunt in hun huwelijk. Zo erg was het.
Jeetje, ja. Dus het was best wel erg. Ja. Maar zo zie je, hè, het is... Hier zie je ook, dit is onze cultuur, hè. We beschermen onze kinderen zoveel. En we zijn ook zo bang, zal ik zeggen. Ja. Om onze kinderen los te laten.
Ja, ik denk ook dat daar heel veel mee te maken heeft met onze geschiedenis ook.
Ja.
Onze verleden is gebakken in het slavernijhistorie. En als je kijkt ook hoe onze ouders klein gehouden zijn, hoe wij klein gehouden zijn. Wij mochten het nooit zelf bepalen wat we deden, hoe we deden. Dat werd door de witte man bepaald. Ja. Dat heeft tot de dag van vandaag invloed op hoe we ook onze kinderen opvoeden. Durven dromen, risico's nemen en voor dingen gaan.
It is in my later years that I realized how my parents protected me from this dark slave history and background. I can separate my life into two pieces. The period before traveling abroad to study and the period after. The period before, I never thought or even experienced in my wildest dreams that the color of my skin is something that would negatively impact my progress. The period after traveling abroad to study is what brought the Black awakening and made me realize that actually I am different and that difference isn't always positive. How this translates from being the best of your class on the islands to being basically non-accepted when you move to Europe. From being someone that was considered to be intelligent enough to moving to be someone that was considered not to be intelligent enough because he didn't dominate his fourth language to perfection. So the transition was a very hard transition. My first year was a failure. I failed a lot of my classes. Of course, along the way, I had some angels. One of these angels was the dean of the school where I studied, that helped me by talking with my teachers to make sure that they understood that because of the cultural differences and where I come from, different strategies needed to be used to help me achieve my goals and achieve my academic career. And it is also this lady that helped me apply for this international scholarship to do my MBA in the United States. New York City was a great experience. The diversity of people and cultures that you found in that city was something that you don't find in most European capitals. And the reason being is that the United States, on the geography in the country, knows what racism is. They institutionalized it. Black people lived in that country. While historically in Europe, slavery was actually illegal. on the continent. So we in Europe are continuously being seen as the guests. While we're not guests, we help build the societies in Europe as much as the Europeans themselves, with our blood, sweat and tears. So the United States was an eye-opening for me because it shows me what the Black diaspora was all about. I started reading about slavery, about the impact that it had. And there is where my journey and my quest for self-knowledge started. One of the biggest disappointments that I have in my life was when I tried to enter the labor market. Having 3 academic degrees, applying for all the major jobs in the Netherlands, I didn't even get an interview. My first job was working at a manufacturing plant. The night shifts pay very well and I needed that money to pay off my student debts. It was one, or may I say another angel, that called me, the lady working in a temp agency, to ask me why someone with my background was working night shifts in a manufacturing plant. And she offered me a new and better opportunity as an administrative assistant, basically typing in invoices in administration systems. Not really what I was educated for, but it was a start. And I took it with both hands. Despite the struggles at the start of my career, I got the entry point into corporate world in the Netherlands and I progressed. I became senior director and senior executives in some really great companies and brands. However, my type of leadership was never good enough. Every time these leadership positions came open, there was a reason why I didn't fit the mold. That is the second level, frustration and racism that I was confronted with. This triggered me to start thinking about how can we start changing the narrative, reframing the narrative, so that leadership becomes something that people like myself, but also white men that want to do it differently, can aspire to. I have achieved what I have achieved despite the struggles and the racism that I have experienced. And believe me, I am not the only one. There are more people that have experienced the same racism and prejudice that I have. I have nephews and nieces growing up, and I want them to have a better chance to live a fulfilled life than I did. I want inequalities eradicated from the globe. I want inequalities eradicated from our communities. I want inequalities to be eradicated from our organizations. My goal and my mission is that we create a society that at best is capable of minimizing those notions that exclude people in all its facets. That we can embrace differences and use it to our advantage.